Well, we've got a spicy SEC take to start off this episode. Plus, we dive into the top 10 non conference games on the schedule this year, games 10 through 6, and finally go to Big 12 country for a couple of best bets. All that and more right here on the Three Technique.
One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. Oh, the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. No, they didn't. Oh, my gracious. How about that?
Welcome in, everybody. Another episode of the Three Technique, a college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. It's the full trifecta here tonight. Trey, as we return to 2 episodes a week, starting the 2-a-days a little bit earlier than the guys on the actual gridiron are. We're all playing a little hurt, a little sick on this episode. All 3 of us seemingly have lost our voice for different reasons, but hey man, here we are. There's news to talk about, there's games to preview. We're here doing it for the people.
Yeah, we got kickoff times last week, and that is, to me, the unofficial start of preview season, because we can really start breaking down, okay, these are the high-profile non-conference games. These are what we want to look forward to. These are the big nighttime games that maybe a home team sneaks up on somebody. We'll talk about all that. And, yeah, it's June. It's right around the corner, guys. We talked about we are under 100 days until week 0 kicking off, and healthy or not, we got to get it together. We got to find a way to do this, and we will.
That's right. There are no excuses here now that we've hit the preseason. Garrett, we're also preparing for a massive content overhaul this preseason. We're doing 2-a-days right now. The plan right now to give the people all their content is to do 3 episodes a week coming up. And right now, to prepare for that, we're deep into preview magazines, deep into writing content as well.
Yeah, we're really ramping up, man, and it's an interesting time, like you're saying, for us to actually ramp up. Because we're all kind of feeling down. I want to go ahead and shout out, if anybody knows a teacher, check in on them, make sure they're okay, order them a tea or something like that, because most of us fall pretty close to sick or ill at the end of the school year, and especially those that work graduation and have to scream and yell because things aren't organized very well. If y'all want the inside baseball on that, you can find me on Twitter. But no, it's man, it's a great time of the year. Preview season's amazing. It's given me, I'm the teacher here. I get to kind of hang out a little bit during the summer days. And while I'm just sitting here, I get to kind of do the previews and read through every single magazine and look up all the hot takes. So plenty of effort going into this little preview season. All hands on deck over here at 3 Tech HQ. So we're getting ready to go.
Yeah, I just checked. I'm not even done. I've started multiple conference previews. I'm not done with my first one. Still have a couple teams left to go, and it's almost 5,000 words. So if that tells you where we are in the conference preview slate, get ready. More content on the way. Like I said, 3 episodes a week are getting ready to come down the pipe. And all of these preseason episodes, all of our episodes brought to you by our good friends over at Home Field Apparel. The good brand continues to cook up all kinds of heat. You can use our code 3TechPod for 15% off your first order if you are a new customer, or if you head on over to our Instagram, Twitter bio, you can use our link tree to get that same discount code. It supports the show, keeps us rolling. And guys, the retro logos have been everywhere. I saw that they were flying with the Indianapolis 500. Multiple people repping the good brand. Of course, as you get into college baseball, regionals, super regionals, and then obviously college football with the new school year. Those retro logos are sharp. They stand out. So make sure you go ahead and get your shopping done. Use our code. We would really appreciate that. Also, one last plug for our social media. If you're not following us on Spotify, on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you get your podcast, video content, or social media as well, we'd love to have you at 3 Tech Pod. The Jimmies and the Joes are jumping on board early this season, guys. We've been really intentional, I think, about putting out some high quality content to get fans through the dog days of summer. And hey, EA college football coming out, that helps. But talking about team previews, best bets, previewing schedules, we're on it early this year, partially because we kind of have to be. We got to get some stuff done early so I can go get married and go on a honeymoon. But we're here for the people and the new followers are jumping on board. So if you're new, if you're finding the podcast through somebody who's maybe sent you our way, we'd love to have you join as well. 3Tech Pod on all the major platforms.
And so many of those followers from that Nebraska video, shout out Trey for actually hyping up Nebraska a little bit on the podcast. Go Big Red, just going to shamelessly, play to the base right now. You guys are the guys watching the videos right now. Keep watching it. It's become our third most viewed video so far. So shout out that one. Go Big Red. We're all in on Nebraska, I guess.
Do not let me down. Do not make me look stupid, please.
Please.
Because I will turn on you on a dime. I have no loyalty. Texas Tech.
Well, let's get into it with a take that has certainly the ability to make someone look stupid, and that's SEC Michael Bratton went on the Paul Feinbaum show, and it's hard to leave Feinbaum speechless, but Michael did it today when he proclaimed that Texas A&M would finish higher than Texas when it was all said and done. For full context, he said that probably means 10-2 or 9-3 for one of, if not both of those teams, but he picked Texas A&M to win that rivalry game at the end of this season and finish higher in the SEC than the Texas Longhorns did. Now, Trey, we're Aggies. We root for A&M here. We have certainly been accused of drinking the Kool-Aid at times. We've been accused of being hypercritical at times. So I feel like we've been a good bellwether for the A&M fan base. This shocked me when I heard it because I'll be honest, even if we are doing what's the Doctor Universe deal in the Marvel, what's his name?
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange. Even if we're doing the, multiple universes, to me, there aren't that many that end with an Aggie outcome that's better than the Longhorns, who I have as a, top 2, maybe 3 national championship contender.
Is it all the way the Infinity War scene where he like spazzes out and says there's like 300 million outcomes and how many do we win? 1. I don't know that it's that far, but man, all I know is Mitch, you and I got to take in the baseball game Saturday night, and boy, I don't know about you, but that fired me up for this rivalry to be back. I'm not gonna lie, I found myself in the contingent of the A&M fan base that was more annoyed with Texas joining the SEC than excited just because of all the drama that they bring with them. And we saw a lot of that on Saturday night on display in that baseball game. But, I'm pretty fired up after attending that in person. The two fan bases coming together, A&M coming out on top in a really hard-fought game. I hope that's a preview for what we get this fall. I hope that that's, a fun back and forth game that A&M ultimately wins at home as a selfish homer. But this take, man, I don't know. It really does seem, when you look at the talent that's on the field, I really do think the rosters are comparable. And I think you can break down position by position. I think there's going to be edges that Texas have. There's going to be edges that Texas A&M has. But coaching, Mike Elko's still too much of an unknown. Never coached a game in the SEC. As a head coach, we know that he did really well at a place that he had a lot of talent discrepancies at Duke, but hasn't coached a game in the SEC. Neither has Steve Sarkisian as a head coach. So a lot of wild cards in the coaching department, a lot of wild cards at new faces at both of these places that they're having to replace their dudes from last year that helped them out to bring that program, in Texas' case, bring that program out of the doldrums of the Big 12. So it's going to be fascinating. I think the hard thing is, and honestly, as we've dove into preview season, this is like a rant that I'm not going to let go. It's going to be almost impossible to determine who had a better season, even within conferences, because of these unbalanced schedules. And if you look at the schedules, I don't think there's any sane person that would tell you Texas has a harder schedule than Texas A&M this year.
No.
The road trips are much harder for Texas A&M. A&M has more difficult games at home than Texas does. Texas dodges the vast majority of the top of the SEC, with the exception of Georgia and Texas A&M. So it's going to be really hard for A&M to finish above Texas, even if they do beat them in November, and even if they do have an objectively better team. I'm not saying that I think 100% either of those things are going to happen, but even if those two things are true, Texas might still finish ahead of them just by virtue of an easier schedule.
I think it's possible that it could be due in part to the easier schedule. I think a lot of it also for me, and Garrett, maybe you agree with this. Like you look at, yes, the roster turnover for Texas, they have some critical players to replace at key spots, but at A&M, even though, I wrote this in the team preview, which will be released soon, even though the names walking out the door are more impressive than the production they put on the field, Texas A&M still overturns a large majority of those starters. I'm talking offensive line, defensive line, in the secondary. The secondary is almost entirely new. You got to get a healthy quarterback in Connor Wegman through the whole season, right? The offensive line was not good last year, and although A&M in our minds has done a lot of the right things to push this program forward, to say that in year one that Mike Elko leads the Aggies to a better record than Steve Sarkisian, who has all the momentum in the world, who is coming off of what should have been probably a college football semifinal victory had they been able to pull it off against Washington, and then just getting whoever they wanted really in the transfer portal. I mean, it's going to be fun to break that down in the written preview and obviously in the video side as well. But you look at what position groups they needed to take talent from, and they went out and got one of the best available in the portal at that position. I, I would love for Mike to be true, but oh boy, the math ain't mathing for me.
Yeah, and as a math teacher, I'm gonna let you know that math. I'm gonna need him to show his work because I don't see it either. Man, like, because look, here's the deal. Yes, Texas got just about everybody they wanted out of the portal that Lane Kiffin didn't want, right? Something like that. Like Lane's just the portal king right now. He comes to your campus and takes your 5 stars. But like Texas got a lot of great guys in the portal. A&M did pretty good in the portal too. Obviously not as good at the top level, but they replaced a lot of stuff that they needed. There's a lot of stuff that, were problems last year for A&M that they did replace. Look, I could sit here and I could make you a case for why Texas A&M is going to be a lot better this year. I can make you a case for why Texas is going to be worse, right? There's reasons for either of those two takes to be true. I don't think that I can make you a case that Texas is going to finish worse than A&M right now. Like there's always the weird hypotheticals, right? What if Quinn goes down game one and Connor Wigman emerges and he's, this massive contender for Heisman or something? Like anything could happen technically, right? We've seen crazier things happen. Heck, TCU went to the national championship game a couple years ago. Anything can happen in college football. I guess it's possible. But just sitting here trying to say, okay, I want to be honest about what I think, honest about my evaluations. If Texas A&M goes 9-3 this year, that's a fantastic season in year one for Mike Elko, and Texas will still probably finish 10-2 at worst. And look, you could find a way to get a bunch of losses on the schedule for Texas, right? There's a way that you could find it. You could say that they barely squeaked through some Big 12 stuff last year, which is kind of true. They squeaked through a couple of those games in the Big 12 last year that they shouldn't have escaped with. But at the same time, this is still a team that has learned how to win. And you could say squeak through, but I could tell you that that's experience and learning how to win games, especially when you didn't bring your A game and when you didn't bring your best product to the field. And so, again, for me, I just look at this and I think that, yeah, like Texas is probably going to have a really, really, really good season. And as good as A&M could be, if Mike Elko, if Connor Wigman, if the defense, if the secondary, if the offensive line, that's a lot of ifs. If all those things go right, maybe A&M's really good. They still might barely just squeak out a 9-3 or a 10-2, which might just tie Texas. So again, I don't think this is a indictment on either side. I'm not going to say hey, Texas is awful or A&M's amazing, but I just cannot make, I cannot make the argument that A&M's finishing better right now in honest faith, outside of some, again, kind of crazy situations and the Doctor Strange one situation where this comes out the right way for A&M, right? There's just a lot of situations I don't see it.
Man, if you're a Texas fan new to the SEC and you just haven't followed Mike Bratton on Twitter and don't know his shtick, he is very much a guy that will rile up a fan base
Yes.
intentionally. In case in point, his tweet earlier today, guys, with Quinn Ewers and Connor Wegman discussing the Texas football cover. I love this. A Heisman contender and Quinn Ewers. And if you're listening on the podcast, the cover is Quinn and Connor Wegman staring each other down with rivalry renewed. I loved that tweet. I thought that was hilarious and just a great welcome to the SEC and welcome to SEC Mike for Longhorn fans.
He's the anti Josh Pate, right? Like he
Oh yeah.
will
Yeah.
poke
He does
the
not.
bear. No, he wants to make you mad, and then he'll have he's a great football mind, very intelligent guy. I enjoy listening to him, but he gets you to engage with him sometimes by poking the bear, whereas the Josh Pates might stroke your ego, and that's how they start that football conversation. So I'd love to know what you, the Jimmies and the Joes, think about this. I think 9-3 is the absolute floor for Texas. I think it's the most realistic ceiling for Texas A&M. So, could the Aggies with a win over Texas, find a way to end up ahead of them in the standings? I think if everything goes wrong for Texas, that's and A&M does almost everything right. That's how we get there. Is basically how I'm viewing this. But very interesting take. Is peak preseason content. I mean, we're not even to SEC media days, and Mike is in summer form.
Case in point, Mitch, he at the top of his Twitter page right now still has his post-spring power rankings, and he has Texas at 3 and A&M at 8. So whether or not he actually believes what he's saying on the Feinbaum show, it's who knows.
Well, he got Feinbaum to be speechless, which, like I said, feat in and of itself. We'll take a quick break. On the other side, we start our breakdown of the top 10 non-conference games rolling out to TVs everywhere this fall. We've got best bets coming around as well, just on the other side of this break. Welcome back in, everybody. Top 10 non-conference games of 2024 is the subject of interest. We're breaking down games 10 through 6 on the schedule in this episode. Thursday morning's episode, we'll wrap it up with games 5 through 1. And Trey, it's interesting because I feel like there's a lot of good non-conference games on the slate. Games that I'm certainly going to be interested in weeks 2, 3, 4. But I tell you what, man, week 1 is an absolute banger this year. We've got heavyweight matchups left, right, and center. And we've also got some tremendous group of 5 non-conference matchups as well. Some of those involving the Pac-2, rip to the Conference of Champions. Kind of set the stage here for this first 10 through 6 breakdown. What did you like? Maybe what are some of the things that we overlooked or passed on as we made this schedule?
Well, it's an interesting world that we're stepping into. And just so you guys know how we do this, typically when we make these lists, we try to avoid the ones that are played every single year. So you won't see the Cy-Hawk game on here. You won't see Florida State. You won't see Clemson, South Carolina. Obviously, those are massive games, but we try to highlight on this show every year the ones that we don't get all the time. So you're going to see some big-time matchups, some big-time brands. Last year, our top one was Ohio State Notre Dame, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And that ended up being a big
game.
Lived up to the hype. So, yeah. And I think we were talking off air before we hit record tonight. It seems like the number of these interesting non-conference games has definitely gone down with the rise of super conferences, mostly because all these teams are in the same conferences now. And it's hard for them to have a non-conference game, except with the exception of Arizona and Kansas State. They're somehow still playing a non-conference game against each other. But it's hard for them to have a non-conference game because they are playing these big brands within conference now. And so I think eventually, as teams kind of feel out the 12-team playoff and realize, hey, we can challenge ourselves a little bit and still make our way into a 12-team playoff, even if we stumble in a big non-conference game, we'll see more overall big brand versus big brand out of conference. But for right now, I think teams one had to cancel a bunch of games when they moved
Yeah.
conferences to. I think like Oklahoma, Georgia was going to happen as a non-conference game this year, right? And we don't get
Right.
that as a non-conference game or a conference game. So it's interesting. It's a sign of the times, but we still have a ton of great games to break down.
We absolutely do. Let's start it off the top with number 10. And this is potentially the best G5 non-conference game in the entire country this year. Troy at Memphis on September the 7th, Trey.
Yeah, my biggest G5 versus G5 non-conference game, because you still
Correct.
have games like, I think Boise State is going to have a really good team this year, and they go to Oregon this same week. That could be a really interesting game and really up Boise State's playoff chances. But G5 versus G5, this is two heavyweights at that level. If you recall last year, Troy ended up winning the Sun Belt, won 11 games. They lost a ton of production from that team. I think they're in the 120s in the returning production rankings, but that culture at Troy,
New team.
yeah, it's a new team, but that culture at Troy stands strong. And I think they're a winning program that competes at the top of the Sun Belt and typically reloads at that level. So they might be struggling a little bit out of the gate, and that might be the difference in this game against Memphis, but they're going to be a player in the Sun Belt, and that means they're going to be a player for a potential G5 playoff spot. And Memphis is a really sexy pick right now to get that G5 playoff spot. They're a sexy, trendy pick to win the American. The SP Plus has them at about 11% chance to go 11-1 or better. And if they go 11-1, they have the schedule to make it to the college football playoff, because I can't remember their power conference game off the top of my head, but they do play a power conference team as well right after this game against Troy. So this is going to be a big benchmark for both of these teams and could really set the winner up to make a run for the playoff.
Memphis has everybody back this season. Their offense was humming. Seth Hennigan has been really, really good after, I'll be honest, I covered him in high school and thought he was a decent arm, but didn't see him developing into the quarterback that he is now. Gerard Parker takes over at Troy after Summerall left for Tulane. So that's, it's a whole new team, a whole new staff down there for the Troy Trojans. We always get excited for G5 games, but Garrett, I mean, this year especially, it feels like with kind of our flag planted for regionality and in all college football is good college football. The G5 is going to get even more coverage from us. And I tell you what, this Troy Memphis game already having our attention here in the month of June, I think is a great sign for fans of college football.
Yeah, and if you've been paying attention the last, couple of weeks while we've been talking about college football and the state of things and how things are crumbling or changing or swinging this way or that way, the big, kind of plus in all of this is the fact that the G5 is basically left alone in this entire thing. And, even though, yeah, there's going to be some negative side effects down the road from some things, right now the G5 is maybe as pure of the kind of old college football that we have still kind of remaining. And I appreciate that. I think that's a lot of fun. With regards to this game, though, Troy losing its staff is a huge problem for them, but it's still Troy. I just think that Memphis is, I mean, come on, guys. Memphis is going to be really, really good this year outside of, and I wanted to, go check their schedule, their Power 5 opponent at Florida State. Not maybe an easy draw for Memphis. It'll be a fun game. And
I mean, maybe
TV.
Maybe Florida State doesn't have it all together yet. Maybe DJU isn't the answer, and they get a big win.
DJU has been known to throw a pick or two, so you let Seth Hennigan go ballistic mode over here at Memphis and do his thing. Look, he could do his thing, and they could mess around and walk out of Tallahassee with the dub if they're not careful. So I'm not going to pick that right now. Obviously, I do think that they'll win just about every other game on their schedule. It's a nice schedule for them. Not a whole lot of big time opponents there. They do finish the season at Tulane, so that should be an interesting one to watch. But outside of that, I mean, it can be a fun year for Memphis. And if they do make that run, they go get that 11 wins and get that bid to the playoff. I think this is going to be a really, really, really fun team to root for. And, kind of one of those teams that's going to grab everyone's hearts and be like, hey, it's the G5 team. And, as long as they're not playing your team in the playoff, you're going to want to root for them for the upset and, kind of be the Cinderella story. And it's going to be an easy team to do that with because this Memphis team is a lot of fun.
Game number 9 on our slate is NC State at Tennessee from the bank in Charlotte. That's September 7th. Guys, I'm excited about this one. Grayson McCall, remember him? He's transferred up to Raleigh. He'll lead the Wolfpack for Dave Doran's squad this year against Nico Iamaleava in an early season clash. I think Tennessee is going to be the easy favorite in this game just because it feels like NC State, even when they were kind of at the height of their power a couple of years ago, they were very slept on, right? Nobody expected them to continue that success. Tell you what, if the offense for the Wolfpack can get a little weird with Grayson McCall, it's an early season test for a Tennessee defense that does bring back most of their production. Really, the only big time loss is Elijah Herring, who transferred out the door to Memphis to lead that linebacking core. But still, it's a very tricky test with a lot of talented guys on the other side for the Wolfpack. I think Tennessee is going to be a team that a lot of people pick to go 10-2. One of those losses, though, is not projected to be NC State. So we could have Rocky Top feeling all kinds of things if they drop this one at a neutral site.
Yeah, and we've seen Tennessee the last couple of years be really, really good at home. A little questionable when they leave Knoxville. So I'm really interested in this game because, just like Memphis and Troy, I think this is a fantastic benchmark for both of these teams. I think Grayson McCall could be the best quarterback that Dave Doran has ever had at NC State, and that could be the piece. And he's had some good ones, right?
Take that,
Finley,
Devin Leary.
He's had Devin Leary. He's had some really good ones. I understand what I'm saying when I make that claim. Grayson McCall has been injured the last couple of years. If he can stay healthy and capture that magic from his freshman and sophomore year, where he literally had to put Coastal Carolina on his back, and he has a defense to play with, that's going to be a recipe for a lot of success for the Wolfpack this year. But really what I'm interested in is, how does Nico do against a really complicated defensive scheme? I love this non-conference game for Tennessee. It's a tricky defense that's going to get Nico ready for a lot of the difficult defenses he's going to see in the SEC. He's going to see, maybe more talented defenses week in and week out in the SEC, but the scheme and the way that they can trick you and put guys in different places with that 3-3-5, really good test for a young quarterback.
Should be really interesting. By the way, 3-3-5. Are you interested in running that on College Football 2025, or are we going base 4-3?
I'm not going to lie. The defense on these college football games, I've never been great at schematically getting creative with that. I'm not going to lie. I'm more of an offensive guy on the video game mode, but
Understandable.
If I'm at a small school that can't recruit D linemen, I'll run a 3-3-5. I'll run a three-man front, figure it out.
That's right. Just speed, cause all kinds of havoc. That's what NC State's going to try and do against Tennessee. No doubt about it. Garrett, number 8, we've got Miami at Florida. This is August 31st. Listen, Florida's schedule's been broken down, up, down, sideways. The Gators are going to be up against it this year, and it gets going really from the very beginning, right? I mean, they get the Canes in August to start this season. Simply put, Florida has to get on the board early. Otherwise, where else do they catch a break?
Good question, man. I don't know that they catch a break if they can't score. I think this game might end up being the most important to each respective coach. We made some controversial comments about this at the end of a podcast a couple of months ago, so I'm not going to revisit that. I'm not going to go back and revisit that too much. But look, there's a chance that this could go very poorly for whoever the loser of this game is. Obviously, we know that things are a little bit choppy there at Florida with, some of the recent lawsuits and litigations coming in. And so, look, frankly put, both of these teams need this win. And right now, the X factor is Cam Ward. The X factor is the fact that you got one, I think, quarterback who, has proven himself and another that has not, right? Cam Ward has proven himself. He can play, put a little bit more talent around him, put something on the defensive side of the ball. I know they're replacing a bunch on the defense at Miami, but put something on the defensive side of the ball to play some respectable defense. And I think this will go the right way for Miami. Again, flip side, like Florida is going to be as desperate as they can to win this game, and it's at home. So, you get to play this as a home game. You get to play this in front of your fans. They beat Utah a couple years ago, and they really shouldn't have. And I think that they could do the same to Miami, especially because it's going to be, a super hot game, not temperature wise. I mean, yes, temperature wise, but I mean, super hot, competitive, lots of people freaking out. You could see some fights break out in this game. I mean, that would not be surprising to me at all. But this game is going to be super, super important for both sides. And whoever wins this game is going to be able to catapult that momentum upwards, especially in state for recruiting. The loser of this game is going to be right back in the cellar. And so it's a lot of make it or break it at the very beginning of the season for both of these teams.
There is
Can I paint you guys a
literally.
picture real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It's halftime of this game,
Mhm.
right? Miami's up 17-3. Graham Mertz has not moved the ball, and they got maybe lucky with a turnover to get into field goal range. Do we see
Wow.
DJ Lagway?
Yes.
Yeah,
That early.
I think
Can you
he's
pull the
that
trigger
desperate.
week one.
You have to win this game. If look, put everything else out of it. Your schedule for Florida is so tough next year that you need wins. And so if it's, hey, the defense has been okay, we've been stopping Miami kind of, they only scored a couple times, but we need to get the ball moving. You're going to give it to the 5-star kid. You're going to let him do his thing.
That early though,
Yeah.
Graham Mertz was statistically one of the most accurate and efficient quarterbacks in the country last year. I don't see that early. This is it week 1 or is it week 2 for Florida?
Week one. That's right
Yeah,
off
it's
the
week
bat.
1. Yeah, I mean 2 quarters into the season that will make or break, in my opinion, Billy Napier's career.
Right.
Boy, that would be tough. That would be a move. That would be a decision to just yank it from your 5th year, 6th year, whatever Graham Mertz is, quarterback, and say, "All right, kid, step 1 was starring in a Gatorade commercial. Check. Step 2 is leading us to a comeback at home against Miami." That might be a road to glory script. I don't know that is realistic. August 31st, 2024. But it would it would certainly get the people talking. It would show a level of desperation that I think we all think is there with Florida. It would confirm that if they did that.
I think my big reason I want to say yes to that is you don't get to, if you're Napier and you lose your job, you don't get to coach him next year. So what good is a 5-star in his development and his confidence and whatever else if you ain't the coach of that school anymore? You can, get him nice and fresh for the next guy. What's the point if you go, let's say the Florida goes 3-9, he's losing his job, right? 4-8,
Yeah.
you're still probably losing your job. And so you got to find a way to a bowl game if you're Florida, and you're going to do that with the most talented guys on the field. So I think he throws everything he can at it. And I think, look, if you're going to get him ready, you want to get him ready now so that, a couple games into the season, he gets all the experience he can. You're not going to roll with that right out the gate just in case Mertz is good enough. But yeah, that's going to be a move that you have to have him on a bit of a short leash because you have to be able to score points.
It's a supremely talented roster that Florida has. Napier, toughest schedule in college football history aside, might be about to do less with more on an incredible level. We'll see. Number 7, Alabama and Wisconsin. Camp Randall, the site for this game on September the 14th. It's not a night game, which really sucks because Camp Randall at night is certainly a different place than it is early in the afternoon. But without a doubt, the first true road test for Kalen DeBoer and the Crimson Tide. Trey, it's worth paying attention to. I think the Badgers can hang around for at least a half. Maybe it gets ugly after that.
Yeah, year 2 of Luke Fickell. Does he see a big jump in the results? I know we had a lot of high expectations for him last year that we didn't necessarily manifest themselves, but this is a tough road game, and we don't typically, in the Nick Saban era, we didn't typically see Alabama step out of conference and play a difficult road game like this. I know they went to Texas a couple years ago, but other than that one, it was usually a big neutral site game. Yeah. Usually against, I'm thinking back to the USC game where they won by 50 points in Arlington, and I think they played Duke in Atlanta a few years ago. But going to a road hostile environment is, obviously they do it in the SEC week in, week out, but stepping out of conference and doing that is sometimes a different animal. It's a different environment that your guys have never seen. And I'm really interested to see how they respond. I just, for one, I don't know how close this game is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be close in the first half and Alabama's going to pull away, just because Alabama has so many unknowns this year for the first time in 20 years, it feels like. But I love that this game is on campus. I remember a few years ago, LSU went up there and they played it at Lambeau, which in and of itself was cool for one-off thing. But I love these games on campus. I love that Alabama was willing to go to Wisconsin and challenge themselves out of conference. Just hats off to them for being willing to do that.
Game number 6 and the final one that we have to preview here tonight is Penn State and West Virginia. And this should be a fantastic game. Week 1, August 31st. Penn State publicly being called out as a team by yours truly, others as well, that has missed their championship window. West Virginia, it appears, is knocking on the door of a conference championship in their own right now in the new look Big 12. Obviously, a playoff berth would come with that. So, Garrett, the winner of this game, it feels like, man, great win. Season is off to a success. For West Virginia, if they lose this game, okay, go get them in conference play. You look to take what positives you can. For Penn State, though, man, you lose this game in a series that the Nittany Lions have dominated at an embarrassing level. I wonder how loud the calls, no matter how unfounded they are, but how loud those calls get for James Franklin's job. He's been there for 10 years.
Yeah, and that's kind of the big thing here is I think Penn State has all the pressure on them right now, right? If it's West Virginia, you lose the game, but you put up a good fight, you lose by 3 or something like that. Like, okay, that's fine. You went toe to toe with Penn State. You gave them your best, right? And if you win it, sky's the limit. Oh my gosh, we're amazing. We're winning the Big 12, whatever it is, and the overreaction is going to be incredible if West Virginia wins this game. The overreaction will be so much more severe on the Penn State side if they lose this game. And so I think this is where you're going to really have to see like what you're made of if you're Penn State. You've lost some stuff, right? You lost your best receiver. You lost some real talent off of your team. And you got to start thinking like, hey, like this is the time when Drew Aller gets to find out what he's made of, right? This is the time when he gets to say, I'm going to go to a hostile environment. It's going to be rocking at West Virginia. And he gets to go into that environment and say, hey, this is what I'm made of. I don't care if I don't have the best, most talented guys. I've got enough to go out and win this football game, on the road early in the season, whatever it is, right? So it's going to be on him and on his shoulders. That's a lot of pressure, especially in what will be a raucous environment. I'm curious to see how this goes. I think this ends up being a lot closer than a lot of people might think. Just because of that, right? All the pressure is going to be on Penn State. If you're West Virginia, you kind of get to play with house money because a lot of people are going to be saying, well, Penn State has to do this. They have to win this game. James Franklin has to win this game in order to, I don't know if it's keep his job, but, completely stay off the hot seat and maybe quiet some of the doubters. But look, all the pressure is on Penn State here. And so I think this is going to be an interesting spot. If they're up for it, then this could be a thing that kind of helps catapult them upwards. And if they crumble, then it's just another saga of, okay, well, here goes Penn State again, not living up to expectations. We thought they might be okay. They have a pretty good roster, but I guess they can't get it done, right? It's going to be all of that conversation all over again, except this time you're getting it to start the season.
West Virginia is going to be a good team this year. How good? I can't totally tell from the research and the previews that I've done so far. It certainly looks like this is an 8-9 win team. I just don't know where those losses are going to come. And I think most people will project that Penn State ends up winning this game, but it's on the road. And that is not an easy environment to play in. Penn State, when they've really laid down and just been lifeless, it's been on the road in James Franklin's tenure. Big Ten games, in conference games against Michigan and Ohio State specifically, but still, most of the time it's on the road, and it will not be a friendly environment for the Nittany Lions. So those are our 10 through 6 non-conference games on the list. Again, tune in Thursday morning to get the rest of that list. We'll break that down in full detail later on this week. We'll take one more quick break on the other end. Garrett and I have a couple more best bets to get you ready for 2024 here on the 3 Technique. All right, welcome back. Final segment of today's episode. We've got 2 more best bets for you here to start your week off, right? Garrett, we are going to Big 12 country where we've got Iowa State leading us off. I'm going to take the over 7.5 wins for the Clones this year. Now, last year, I believe it was Trey that was banging the drum for the Clones. You and I were out horrendously on Iowa State. We didn't believe in the talent. We didn't believe in honestly, I don't think we believed in the coaching staff, right? It really felt like maybe the prime had passed Matt Campbell by. Then you have the betting scandal, right? That happens after our preview, and we're like, there is no way. There's no way that Iowa State does anything of note. And lo and behold, they were in a running for the Big 12 title late in the season when we had like everybody in the conference tied trying to go to Arlington. So all of that to say, I've learned my lesson this offseason. We've done some reflecting, a lot of introspection. And guys, I think 8 wins is the floor for Iowa State this year. Let me explain. Clones have 7 very winnable games on this schedule. They get UCF and Texas Tech at home. Both of those teams have struggled mightily on the road, especially, UCF, small sample size, but the big knock on Joey McGuire so far is he can't win on the road. Farmageddon, that's in Ames as well to close the year versus Kansas State. Now, one of these years, they're going to knock off Iowa. It seems like the Hawks get them every year, no matter how bad that offense is. They win a 7-3 ball game. One of these years, and this year might be that year, Iowa State is going to reclaim the Cy-Hawk Trophy. If not, I still only need just one of West Virginia at Kansas, at Utah, or versus Kansas State. So the 7 winnable games don't even include Farmageddon, which is advantageous to have at home. I know going to Kansas, which, Garrett, you're getting ready to talk about them in a second, not easy. At Utah, really, really tough to win on the road there. But Rocco Beck won Big 12 Freshman of the Year last year at quarterback. Coming in, Hunter Deckers gets popped for gambling on sports, and he's out of there right before the season starts. Rocco Beck steps in. We really didn't know anything about him, and suddenly he's throwing for like 29 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, I believe was his final total. So he was more than adequate. They've got explosive players on offense returning at the wide receiver position, and they get Isaiah Alston to transfer in from Army. It doesn't hurt to have a 6'4" playmaker who's got some speed in his game joining your wide receiver core. And they return most of the defense, which is always a top 20 squad under Matt Campbell, a pesky defense. All 5 starters along the offensive line are back. They weren't great last year, but expected to take a nice step forward this year. Listen, I wasn't brave enough to join Trey on the Iowa State bandwagon last year, but right now, the way I look at it, you start with a very winnable schedule to get right to that number. I'll take the Clones to find a way to get over 7.5. 9 wins, honestly, guys, not that surprising for an Iowa State team that I think overachieves a little bit this year and is right there in the conversation for a trip to Arlington.
Yeah, I like it, man. I was on the Cyclones bandwagon last year. Maybe wavered a little bit when Hunter Deckers was busted into the shadow realm for gambling. But, I like the core that they have, and I like the core that they brought back. We've talked so much about how this Big 12 this year is going to be such a power vacuum, and you're just going to throw literally 10 teams. I could see 10 different teams legitimately having an argument to win the Big 12 this year. And I'm not even exaggerating. I think
come on down, Dave Aranda.
I could legit, you could make the case for if these 1 or 2 things go right, this is the team that wins the Big 12. You're going to throw them all into the laundry and see who comes out on top. Why not Iowa State? I think they have the schedule. Like I said off the top, the schedules are going to dictate this a lot. On their schedule, they get Houston, they get Cincinnati, they get a plucky UCF team, but I think you're always going to prefer the G5, the recent G5 to Power 5 jumping teams in the Big 12 until proven otherwise. They get 3 of those teams, and they get 2 of them at home. So that's a great schedule. You couldn't ask for a much better draw than that. They do have to go to Utah to end the year and then Kansas State so at home. So you got to hope that they get it done early, but I think they can.
Yeah, I was originally, a little skeptical of this, Mitch. You said 7.5, and I was like, yeah, one of these years they're going to beat Iowa, but Iowa's still pretty dang good. And then I was looking, well, you just need to win at West Virginia. Well, that's not so easy. At Kansas, I'll make the case for that in a second. At Utah, I'm not going to betray my Utes yet. And then I saw Kansas State, and I'm like, that might be where they get it done because, Kansas State's lost a bunch of pieces. And, I think that they're maybe going to take a step backwards there. And I think, yeah, like the schedule sets up real nice. And a lot of their easier games are on the front end of the schedule. So you can build up a lot of confidence, build up a lot of momentum with those easier games. I mean, outside of Iowa, obviously. But if you're, I don't know, 5-1, 6-1, something like that, you can finish that schedule pretty strong. Maybe grab a game you're not supposed to. That's totally within the realm of possibility, I think.
There's definite Jim Carrey pulling his hair out meme potential here where you get it done early, like right 5-6 wins
Mm-hmm.
to start the year, and then it's just like L L
That's
L.
what they did 2 years ago, right? They got
Yes.
went out to 6-0 and then lost 6 in a row.
But they will
Yeah.
have a nice break at home against Cincinnati, so it won't be straight L's to finish the season, but it's a pretty tough close.
Yeah, it's not a friendly, especially if I'm marking Cincinnati as a win. But man, like last year, I got it exactly backwards. I said if their offense does anything, this is a bowl team, and it was the total opposite. Their offense carried
Their
them
defense
to
was decimated in the
yeah
portal.
3-9
Mhm.
or 3-9. I think is their record. They were the cellar dweller in the Big 12. Yeah, and the defense couldn't do a blessed thing.
Yeah.
So we'll see what Cincinnati's got up their sleeves right now. But Iowa State 7.5. It's certainly not a I wouldn't bet the college fund on it, but if you're throwing a few shekels around, again, not financial advice, maybe look the Clones way. And yeah, important all bold
Throw the
disclaimer.
banner up. Just
Not
got to
not
make sure.
financial advice. Garrett, we teased it. Kansas is on Iowa State's schedule. You've got the Jayhawks as your best bet for this episode.
Oh yeah, man! It is Jalen Daniels time in the Big 12. Look, I'm so on the hype train for Jalen Daniels. I love this dude. He's fantastic. He was hurt last season, so we didn't really get a chance to see him. I know that's the one thing is you get an injury and then it's, oh, well, he's an injury risk or can he stay healthy? And that's just not the case here. He had an injury, tried to keep playing to keep them competitive, and it lingered. And so he just never quite got healthy. I think obviously like when you're playing injured, it's going to lead to other things as well. So look, like Jan Daniels, let's take the last year, throw it away. Go back a couple seasons and see what's been going on. Jalen Daniels is a stud. He's athletic. He makes plays. That's just what he does. Combine him with bringing back Devin Neal, Daniel Highshaw Jr. We're talking about some real athleticism in the backfield there for Kansas. And look, so far it's been, up and down with whatever happens on the defensive side of the ball. They played a little bit better last year. They're going to lose a couple pieces, but that's going to be just fine. Look, at the end of the day, I think that this Kansas team is going to be a really, really, really good squad. I don't think that's exactly a secret, but their line right now is 8 wins, and I think they go over that, and I think they go over pretty easy. And here's kind of why. Here's the weird thing about Kansas this year. Kansas will not play a home game this season. They're doing massive stadium renovations, and they do not play a game at their home stadium. They will be playing 2 games at Sporting KC's stadium at the beginning of the year. They're playing Lindenwood and UNLV. Those are dubs, right? Those are just kind of weird. You're going to be playing them on a soccer field that you just put the paint down for the first time, right? All that kind of thing. It's going to be a weird situation. It's going to be fun to watch. Like, it's going to be fun. And if you can get a ticket to it, go. It's going to be crazy to watch. But put that aside, they're playing 4 games at Arrowhead and then 4 games on the road. The reason I think this plays well for Kansas is, again, you're going to hear me say this several times through previous season, but experience at the quarterback position in college football matters maybe more than any other factor. If you have an experienced quarterback who has been there before, he's going to help you overcome a litany of other problems. When you go to Arrowhead, that's a spectacle. You see this all the time with teams that go to NFL stadiums. Anytime somebody's playing at Jerry World, anytime somebody's playing in Atlanta, you see weird things happen, right? This is just what happens when you play these games. They're playing TCU, Houston, Iowa State, and Colorado all at Arrowhead. I think they can sweep that. I know that we just got done talking about Iowa State doing really well, but I think they can sweep that nice and easy. And I think that the experience from your quarterback, Jalon Daniels, is going to help you not, feel weird about the bright lights, not get, kind of strange about all that. So if you're counting at home, I gave them 6 wins right there, all of their, technical home games. What do they do on the road? Illinois, West Virginia, Arizona State, Kansas State, BYU, and Baylor. There's a bunch of wins on that schedule, guys. I can see 10-2 real easy. Look, if you're trying to be really sort of pessimistic here, I think you could say West Virginia on the road, Kansas State on the road, and maybe Iowa State at Arrowhead. That's still 9-3, and that gets them over their 8 for their win total. So I think that's kind of the pessimistic view of it. But again, I just kind of made that case for Iowa State. Kansas State lost a bunch of pieces. They lost their offensive coordinator. That's going to be a different looking Kansas State team. And again, West Virginia on the road, like that's a good squad. I don't necessarily pick them to win that game, but again, you do have an experienced quarterback going into a hostile environment. I will take that to kind of steady Kansas, and especially you bring the road game or you bring the ground game with you. If you can run the football on the road, you can kind of take the crowd out of it. That's going to be their formula for success pretty much all year long. Look, I think this is a really good Kansas team. I think 9-3 might be a floor for Kansas this year if everyone stays healthy.
Man, I'm old enough to remember when we started this podcast and we were trying to talk people into Kansas hitting over 2.5. Like, man, how times have changed very quickly under Lance Leipold. That's amazing. I'm not calling you out. If you can get 8, go take that number. I have it at 8.5 on FanDuel, so I'll just ask you: would you still be as confident taking over 8.5?
Well, look, I wasn't anticipating a half win anywhere, so I'm thinking 9 wins is probably there. I saw it at 8.
On, I think it was 8 and 8.5.
I can't remember what side I was on, but yeah, if it's 8.5, I'm still gonna assume 9 wins is probably the floor here. I think it's a pretty easy 9 because look, everyone's gonna talk about Colorado. We've talked about them on the podcast. No, just no. They're not losing to Colorado at Arrowhead Stadium. It's just not going to happen. BYU, Baylor. Oh, they could be plucky on the road. Who knows? Maybe DeQuan Finn, Baylor. Right? Like I'm hearing you.
Baylor might. BYU will not be.
Yeah, BYU won't. Baylor could be a little plucky. Who knows? Arizona State. We never. No, it's not going to happen. Right? It's just there's a lot of games where I think there's going to be but Kansas could. No, not with an experienced quarterback. Not with 2 extremely dynamic running backs that you can kind of alternate, let them switch series, stuff like that. It's just not going to happen. I think this is a really good Kansas team. They've scored a lot of points under Leipold, and I think they're going to keep scoring points this year. They're going to outscore a lot of teams and they might finish these games with like a 63-61 type of game and maybe not play that good a defense, but I think they're going to end up finding a way to pull through on a bunch of these games.
That bet swings on that week 2 road trip to Champaign to me. That's a fascinating road game to me. I think if you look at the S&P Plus, that looks like it's going to be about a 7-point spread in favor of Kansas. But Illinois is kind of a weird place to play, and it's a very contrasting style of football than what Kansas wants to play. So if Kansas is unable to dictate the tempo in that game, they could be in a little bit of trouble, and that's one we're definitely penciling in as a win. It could pivot the season right there. It's week 2. That's a very drastic claim to make, but that's a must win to me if you want to hit that number.
I agree. And Jalon Daniels has to stay healthy. That really is the key, right? The Jayhawks were so banged up the last couple of years.
If he does, though, they're competing for Arlington, and I absolutely agree with you.
I agree.
Yep.
I think it's very possible.
They're one of my 10 that could win the Big 12.
How generous.
And I looked it up. Baylor is number 11. So your comment about Baylor unfortunately does not
this
hold.
Close, Bears fans, this close. All right, well, that'll do it for another episode of The 3 Technique. Join us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your content at 3 Tech Pod. Go follow and subscribe. Until Thursday, everybody. So long.
Gracious him. How about